Welcome everybody to session 8 with the amazing Andrea. This is Niche 360. I'm really excited to have this extraordinary, remarkable leader in this session because we go back with this amazing lady. There's some really amazing journeys I've been on where I've learned a lot from Andrea. So I'd really love to introduce the world to her and her to the world. And so Andrea, thank you so much for being here on this show. And really excited about the opportunity we're going to have to dig deeper into, I guess, what makes you an amazing 360 leader. So thanks for coming.
I wouldn't miss it. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah,
I'm honored.
Appreciate it. So just to maybe get started, could you maybe share a little bit about who Andrea is and what her brand is and what's been the journey as to why you set your mind on that particular brand name?
So, yeah, my name is Andrea Lapaolo, and I'm from Canada. I'm from West Coast Canada and East Coast Canada. I would say both. And lived there most of my life until 5 years ago when I decided to move here. When I moved here, I was doing something completely different. I was in restaurant consultation. It was the end of that. I wasn't enjoying that anymore.
I
I
remember
came here
that.
for one last contract. And my partner and I, Patrice, we decided to come here, sell everything, move to Bali when this contract finished. But, of course, we had no understanding of how we were going to pay for our lives here at all. We took a huge chance, and the money started to run out from the contract. And, you know, we had less and less and less. And then I started this brand, this company with one of my good friends in Canada. We decided to partner up and go 50-50 and start a company called Wise Women Productions. And Wise Women Productions is made up primarily of online transformational coaching. I do a lot of the talk coaching calls, and she is a hypnotherapist and does a lot of hypnotherapy online and in her calls. So it works really well together, and we swap clients and share programs. But we also have written many online challenges. I also write a blog that I'm developing a following with. And I'm also in the middle of writing a book. So I'm a transformational life coach. I'm a writer. And the important thing about coaching is just the way that you have to run your own life in order to have anything to offer your clients. So as far as I go with myself is as far as I can go with my clients. And that for me is the biggest gift of doing this work. I truthfully know who the hell I am.
That's powerful. I love that. So when you say transformation, what does it actually mean to you? What does the word transformation mean? What's an experience you've given someone that can identify what the difference is between that and, say, motivation or whatever?
Right. So transformation for me is sustainability. That's what it means to me. So anything in the universe that wants to survive has to transform or transmute or change themselves in some way, right? So this sort of stagnancy doesn't create much of a foundation for anything long-lasting. Anything long-lasting has to keep on changing and adapting to its surroundings and to itself. So it's the same thing with human beings. So transformation for me is letting go of or allowing old parts of yourself to die and new parts of yourself to be reborn, you know? And I think this is a forever ongoing sort of practice. As long as you're alive, life itself is a transformation. But when we become conscious of it, aware of it, so we're conscious and aware participants in our own transformation, less and less do we have to be dragged kicking and screaming to our transformation, and more can we preempt or step into our transformation a little bit more as we become more aware of ourselves and our surroundings. So so transformation could be as simple as examining your belief system and realizing there's a whole bunch of beliefs that aren't even yours. And
Yeah.
so you get rid of those and you start to whittle down, what do I want to keep that I got from my parents? What do I want to let go of? What do I want to change? What do I want to grow? And that alone already is going to transform. Transformation begins as soon as you decide or make a decision that there's more. There's more of you in there that you don't know. As soon as you make that decision, you already begin to transform
True. True. Wow, that's
because you've
powerful.
already opened doors.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll get on to the self transformation soon because you and I just recently had a beautiful conversation about the focus of self, but we'll get to that. Can we go, if you don't mind, just I'm curious, explore deeper into how did you first ask yourself that question that is there more? And then what does that
Mm-hmm.
process look like for you that maybe you could share some lessons for people who are about to maybe journey down this path?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if I asked myself that question. That's a funny thing.
Mm,
Um, my earliest memory is about 5 years old, and I just remember thinking so deeply that the world was upside down,
mm,
and that I knew without a shadow of a doubt that somehow, in some way, I was here to help turn the world right side up.
mm, mm.
So I've always known that from such a young age, you know. Now, that notwithstanding, I also pretty quickly got the information from my family of origin that although I thought it was going to be easy because I knew who I was and what I wanted to do, there was a lot in my, of course, my parents, being Italian, being immigrants, wanted me to be a certain way, live a certain way, get a certain job, make a certain amount of money, none of which I was interested in. And so, I didn't have very much control over my life as a child. And I had to go through a huge amount of experiences that when I left my family, left me in a place of, you know, low self-worth, not knowing who I was, being worried and scared and thinking I wasn't good enough, thinking I would never be able to do what I wanted or that I wasn't allowed to do what I wanted. All of those things I realized had to be first faced and addressed before I could even move forward to anything that I wanted to do. So I
Wow.
quickly realized when I left home that my
Mm,
first order of business was really to face my own trauma.
wow. Wow. Yeah, we're definitely going to touch on that. So, how old do you think you were when you're about that age? And what advice would you give someone at that same age if they're about to make that move to address
Right.
trauma?
Well, I think it started in my mid 20s, mid to late 20s, somewhere around there. I couldn't tell you the exact age,
Mm,
but mid to late 20s, when I realized that how I was living my life was in reaction to my
mm,
parents and the things that I wasn't allowed to do, and
wow.
that needed to change so that I was living my life in response to
Mm,
myself.
mm.
So that
Reaction
was
versus response.
huge. So
Yeah.
it started with that. Yeah, so it started with like
Mm,
almost as if I was a teenager who was rebelling.
yeah.
That's how I was living my life, in rebellion.
Yeah.
And also maybe making up some time of doing some things I was never allowed to experience.
Mm, mm,
But it didn't get me far. It didn't
mm,
get me far. It caused me more problems than it gave me, than what I hoped it would give me. So
mm.
it didn't
Like
take me
what?
long to realize,
What
okay,
sort of problems?
oh, I just ran out of steam. I mean, I was just running from one place to another. There was no purpose. There was no, focus. There was no alignment. I had no more peace. I wasn't more fulfilled. I was doing all these different kinds of things, but there was no anchor. I had no anchor. I had no
Mm,
why. There was
mm,
no why.
mm,
Hmm.
mm. Wow.
And without a why, there was no conscious reason for me to be doing what I was doing. And all I knew is I had to move from this reactionary way of being, you know, hatred of my past or in reaction to all the things I think my parents did to me. It was a time to grow up. And I had to move into the response of myself, responding to my truth, my needs, my
Mm,
opinions, my dreams, the things I thought were important. And
mm.
that was huge realization.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's really, really huge. So what's the advice that you would give another 25 to, let's just say 25 to 30, because you said it was in that range, once they realize that they need to have their own story? So what advice would you give them as to the necessary steps they could or should take that you took that allowed you to become the woman that you are now?
Well, the first thing I would say is you're right.
Mm,
You're absolutely right. You do need to make a change
mm,
because you're not living in the highest expression of who you are. Yes, you do need to take a change. And then the next thing I would do is I would say, there's so many good people to reach out to these days. It's a difficult thing to do by yourself. Such a difficult thing to do by yourself, you know? And it's not an accident in this day and age that counselors, coaches, psychologists, psychiatrists, like this is the biggest growing, you know, thing that's going on in our world
industry,
because we're
absolutely.
all sad, we're all lonely, we're all bereft, we're all lost, we're all angry, we've all been duped, we don't know our path, we don't know our purpose, so the advice that I would give is to do a little bit of research and see if you can't find someone that you resonate with and see if you can't do some coaching or some counseling or whatever speaks to you. It's to be still and go inside and find out what or who can resonate with you in order to give you some help, some support, some guidance along this journey. Because this is probably the hardest work any of us will ever do in our lifetime, I believe.
Wow, that's powerful, and I love your dog in the background. So let's talk a little bit now, because I got really curious about that word trauma. You said it's a traumatic experience to go through it. So what did you mean by traumatic experience, and how do you think, because also in these new times, people are traumatized by a lot of things externally, internally, how does one process trauma to get to a point where they're actually productive and empowered like you are, versus some people who are maybe a victim of trauma and use it almost like a shield? I know I've been a victim
Sure.
of this one, and just get stuck and keep perpetuating more traumatic situations. So could you maybe expand and elaborate on that?
Sure. First, I want to say that we're all in process all the time, every single person, everywhere, whether they know it or not. So I truly believe that even if nothing is done, eventually um, something will happen that will force you to face that trauma. So, but if you're in a place where you actually want to do something about it, you have a willingness to, I think the first step is to face, take a look at and face the things, the ways that you grew up. Because if you stop for a moment and take a look at your life, you'll be able to see that every way you run your life is most likely a reaction to that trauma.
Mm,
Definitely,
mm, it's
So
powerful.
you'll be able to pinpoint if you had an overprotective mother or an overbearing father or, any of those things. Because you will continue. What happens is whatever our parents did to us, not on purpose, they didn't know any better. This is not a blame thing. But whatever they did from their hearts, when we leave their care, we then become that same parent doing that same thing to ourselves. We're not with them anymore, but we carry the legacy on. So we keep on doing it. So if they thought that, we should get that great job and we need to, well, then we're just going to keep on trying and trying and trying
Mm,
to do that thing,
mm,
instead of being able to connect with ourselves and find out, what do we want?
yeah.
What did we ever want? And
Mm,
start understanding the importance of that. So the first step in dealing with trauma is facing it,
mm,
is being able
mm,
to admit that you have it, and then the next step is forgiveness. And it's not forgiving your parents. That's not the next step. The next step is forgiving yourself.
oh,
Forgiveness is a
snap.
huge part of the trauma, right? Because when you forgive yourself, you're forgiving yourself for ever being sucked into it, for ever having to experience it, for the shame you felt because of it, for the lack you have because, for the lack of self-worth, all the things. You have to forgive yourself for that. When you do that, you simultaneously forgive your parents.
I
Whenever you
really like
forgive
that distinction.
yourself, you simultaneously forgive everybody else involved. But it has to start here.
We'll get into that because that's coming back to the self-care and self-love thing. But what maybe traumas have you had to overcome in the past that you can identify and perhaps share, if you don't mind, that could be really, and how did you work through that to feel could come to that place of self-forgiveness? I remember, and maybe I shared it in the coaching sessions with you, but I went through a period of sexual trauma as a young person. And even though I knew the step was forgiveness, I first didn't intellectualize that it was forgiveness of myself before gifting the opportunity to forgive the people who were involved in the situation. So I was more curious to hear from you, what's been your level of trauma that you don't mind sharing? And then how did you get to a place of knowing that self-forgiveness is the first step, not go forgive other people? Because that's what most people say, forgive those who hurt you, or forgive the offenders, or, forgive your parents. But it's impossible if you haven't forgiven yourself. And I really love that you shared that, because even for my journey when I worked, it took me instantly back to that moment. At 30, I started that process of self-forgiveness, and then naturally it spilled over into compassion about everything else that happened. So I really, really love that insight. But could you maybe share from your experience anything that you maybe had to deal with and overcome, and how you went about that?
Well, I think for me, I had an extremely overbearing father who never, ever talked to me about anything that I was ever doing good. So his philosophy was, when you're doing a good job, I don't say anything. That's how you know you're doing a good job. And when you're doing a bad job, I yell and scream at you. And, and then that's supposed to like wake you up. So never any positive reinforcement. And so, of course, consequently, I went through life for a long time, trying so hard to be so perfect at everything. And I also went through life lying a lot. I lied a lot.
Really?
Because I wanted it to yes, because I wanted it to seem like I was more than I was, because I always didn't have a very good perception of myself. I never thought I was good enough because of the way I grew up. And so I would always lie and say that I did something or was something or had something that I didn't in order to make myself look better.
Yeah.
And I remember one day I was with a friend. I happened to be pregnant at the time with my son. And I had a friend who was living with me. And I remember I was talking to her about a whole bunch of stuff. And just in the middle of whatever I was saying, she called bullshit on me. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, bullshit. It's all bullshit. You're a liar. You're lying. It's all bullshit. You're just lying and lying and lying, and we got into a fight.
Wow.
And at the end of it, she had broken me down to the point where I finally admitted that I had been lying, and there was a whole string of lies. And it was such a relief. And she happened to be sort of one of my first teachers or mentors along this journey, who was one of the first people to have the courage to tell me the truth, because I was loud, I was pushy, I was controlling, I was manipulative. And she had the courage to cut through all of that and call a spade a spade. And I am so grateful for that. But that was the first time that sort of way that she broke me down helped me, because then she compassionately took me through to help me understand it wasn't my fault.
Oh, wow.
It was my responsibility to change it, but it wasn't my fault that I was doing it that way. I thought it was the best way to do it.
Wow.
And so she's the one who compassionately brought me to this idea of forgiving myself. I thought I was such a rotten person. after that,
mm,
like the worst person in the world, you know?
mm, mm,
So then the concept of self-forgiveness in my own doing of it helped me to understand exactly the kind of grace and compassion needed to bring somebody else there. And it
mm.
truly does sometimes take a sort of a breaking down of a person in order to bring them back up again. So
Wow.
it's sometimes a really ugly process until somebody acquiesces to the truth.
Mm, mm, mm. I really love this, and I know you and I have had this approach in the way we try and help people sometimes, and I found, or at least what I'm learning from what you're saying now, is I think a little piece that wasn't conscious for me, because I always wondered when I did it well or when I didn't do it well or effective or whatever, caring enough, is this thing
Right.
of allowing people not to feel like they're a bad person, because it would turn into judgment or victimization or I'm such a bad person, which automatically everybody does when you're breaking them down, but how to help them through that transition. So how then do you feel, back to the coaching conversation we're having now, do you feel a lot of people who are in this position of help? Because as you said, we are in an industry where now our industry booming with coaches. You know, I'm going to have a
Yes.
big section on this. We'll probably get you back on the show, and you and I have been on this journey together. And I love what you said to start this interview was, you know, you've realized that you have to keep transforming for you to be a more effective coach. I think I picked that up at the beginning. And too often
Yes.
coaches get a certificate, they get accredited by ICF, and or they've now knighted themselves a coach because they went and got dipped in a spiritual pond in Bali, and they're not growing any longer, but they're still taking on
Yes.
clients without having this element you talked about of breaking people down without making them feel that they're wrong. What advice would you give a client or a prospect looking for help to get through this transformation? What should they be looking for in a coach? And second,
Okay.
what
Yes.
would a coach need to be aware of before they try and take
Yes.
people down this transformation path? Because as you said, it's very yucky, it's difficult, and we both know what that experience is like, but we're quite
Of course.
confrontational by nature, so we don't
Of
mind going
course.
there. So we sometimes leave people dismantled by, or at least me. I've left people
Yeah.
in the past dismantled because I wasn't aware of the second point
Yes.
you just shared. So could you expand on that on both sides? Advice for the client and advice for coaches in a responsible position. Did I ask that question right?
Sure. Yes. Now I have it.
Thank
I
you.
just wasn't sure.
I wasn't sure either.
Advice for clients, you know,
Yeah.
advice for clients, interesting. I really think that when a person is willing, like they're ready and they're willing to make some changes in their life, that
Mm,
the best thing they can do then is connect inside and just listen to their gut
mm,
and their intuition.
mm,
Um, I do what I do in the way that I do it, and that's great. But I also know many other coaches who do many other things in many different ways, and each one of them has somebody that they're meant to talk to. I believe that there's somebody there for everybody. And I'm not here to say that what I do and how I do it is better than the way somebody else does it. So I really think that a person who's ready for change truly is going to find exactly who they need to begin that journey with, period. That's how life works. And I totally believe in that.
that's
And
beautiful.
as far as coaches go, I think the same thing. I think that as a coach, or if you're going to become a coach, or if you are a coach, again, you have to follow your intuition and decide what is going to be the best way. Because as a coach, I mean, even in any field that you're in, if you're always striving to become better and you're always striving to make sure you have that why, that reason why you're doing what you're doing, then inevitably you're going to find ways to improve or to dig deeper or to become or to continue your own becoming. I think it's inevitable. That's for sure. But I also think as a coach, you need to make sure you always have somebody that you're talking to.
Yeah.
That's always a great thing.
Yeah.
Someone that you can talk to, that you can share with, that you can vent to, and somebody who doesn't lie to you, somebody who doesn't blow smoke up your ass, someone who will tell you the truth no matter what about everything and anything, so that you're constantly challenged to find that alignment and make sure that you're walking your talk you know, and I think that's true for anybody, anywhere, doing anything in this life, you know. So as long as you're willing, you're going to find what you need as a coach
Yeah.
and as a client.
Yeah, and I think for me, the biggest common denominator I'm experiencing now is there's still this there's a divide because some of us haven't learned to trust ourselves. Therefore, we can't trust a coach or trust another advisor or trust another person when they're telling us, calling us on our bullshit. So, that journey is very curious to me because until you're open to that input, which is a reflection on your own self-trust, I believe, you can't really receive the information, nor would you be looking for it. And so a lot of people stick to trying to figure it out by themselves. And you just said it earlier, alluded to that we can't figure everything by ourselves. We can't see the picture when we're in the frame. So I've always believed in advice and coaching and for this reason, but
Yes.
trying to then drop what I know to be knowing and just get into a place of surrender to receive the information. Like you gave me some gifts that I'm going to ask you more questions on in this interview when we had our little coconut.
But that might be a process.
Yeah, so that's what I say.
That
So
might be a process.
what's been your journey on that for you? Like,
well, that
how
might
did
be a
you get?
process. Like you might not be open to what a coach has to tell you, but yet you still want a coach. And let me tell you, you're going to get the exact right coach that you need for exactly how far you can go. And whether you know it or not, whatever happens between you and that coach is exactly what needs to happen in order to open you up just that much more, and for the coach, in order for you to be more sort of welcoming of what it is you're asking for. Sometimes what you're asking for isn't exactly what you need, or sometimes what you need isn't what you're asking for.
Yeah.
But I do know this: life has a way of matching you up with the people and situations that are exactly correct for you and your growth in that moment.
Nice.
So
Fantastic.
doesn't matter.
So what are you growing on at the moment that life is matching you with, that you're getting the most transformation at the moment?
So one obviously is my relationship. I'm coming up on 10 years with my partner, Patrice. And I would say he
I love you guys. You're rock stars.
one of the biggest influences in my growth at the moment, and has been for many years. He helps me see myself. Mirrors everything about me: what I hate, what I love, what I have problems with, my insecurities, my fears. And every we come together, I get a very clear image of who I am and who I'm not, and where my work is, and where my problems are, and how I create problems, and how I need to find the solutions to those problems that I create. So our relationship is kind of cool in a way because we have some ground rules that we've had for a long time. And one of the main ground rules we have is no blame. So he can't blame me for anything and I can't blame him for anything. And I mean, that alone already sets us up for like a radical responsibility in every single transaction and every single communication.
Wow.
And that hasn't been the easiest. That's really hard. It gets easier though. It does get easier. So he's one of my main coaches, I would say, without being a self-professed coach. He just happens to be a coach in my world anyway, for sure. I also have Mom, who is the hypnotherapist, the partner in my company, Wise Women Productions. And she is also just a wonderful, wonderful mirror for me. But in a completely different way, because we're business partners, but which we still like to call our second marriage. Because it takes just as much time and effort and interpersonal communication as it does with Patrice. It's the same with her, and she helps me see another whole aspect of myself in business and working with a partner, who's not my intimate partner, but who's my business partner. So both of them help me to work on the things that I've been working on forever, which is letting go, for sure. letting go of being right, letting go of proving points, letting go of anything and everything, letting go of thinking that there's anything that important, because there isn't. So that's something I work on a lot. Communication, for sure, because I come from a place of being loud, talking fast, being manipulative,
Italian
being
stallion.
pushy. Yes, very much. So
Mm.
learning how to acquiesce, step back, step down, which brings me to the second rule in our relationship, which
Gonna ask.
is the person who steps down first wins
I love
the
that. I wrote that
argument.
last time. Could you expand on that a little? Give us a situation, because
Yeah, so
you saw me take my book out last time. I was like, oh, that's good. I just did it again just while you were talking about your first one, which is the no blame. I took the book out again.
no
I was
blame.
like, oh, we didn't get that one. Go on. So what's been the example of he who steps down first wins? What do you mean by that? Go on.
So usually in an argument or a discussion or a communication between a couple, an intimate couple, it's always that thing of getting the last word. Everybody wants to get the last word, because when you have the last word, it's like this illusion that your argument was stronger than the other person's. So somehow you won. And so when you walk away from that conversation, the other person knows, well, I had the last word, which means that my view stands. Theirs doesn't, So that's the kind of the thinking.
Gotcha.
But it's such an illusion, and it's such an ego-powered thing. So nothing is really solved. All that happens is you have this illusion that having the last word, and sometimes when you have the last word, you might also be abusive in your language, not very nice in the way that you get to it.
Yeah, that's me. Nutshell.
So we devised, co-created this new rule, which is the first person to step down wins the argument. So what that means is, when we're like this, heated, maybe even screaming, yelling, can't stop, the first person who can become aware of themselves in that moment and go, oh, shoot, and just step down and start listening to the other person is the clear winner of the argument.
And I'm so competitive. This is like gold, because it's wired in my psyche.
Yes.
It's about winning, and I think people all win when you win, but we'll have that conversation about what winning means.
But if it's about winning, then there's more chance that you will remember to step down. So really, it's just a cue. It's like a little reminder. The winning part reminds your brain to pivot in the moment, which is what we all have trouble with, right?
That's right.
You're in the heat of it
emotion.
all.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's when you need to pivot. That's when you need to step down. That's when you need to listen. When you want to speak the most is when you need to listen.
Yeah. Wow. So how well do you think you're doing? Because I'm assuming with both our common history of being vocal and getting the last word in, how are you doing on that front recently? Because you told me there's been a lot of transformations, as you just mentioned, and how do you think it's benefiting your relationship now? Like, what's been the changes or the rewards you're getting for doing that?
So at the beginning of our relationship, in the first few years, he was the one really able to listen. I was the one shooting my mouth off all the time, screaming, yelling. Everything was a travesty. Everything was not fair. Everything was wrong all the time, right? I would say within the first 5 years.
Yeah.
And
wow, 5 years. That's a good effort.
That kind of shifted, like year 5, 6, around there, it sort of shifted a little bit. And all of a sudden, I experienced a kind of a liberation through releasing the need to have to speak at all. And then I became this really spooky person to him, because I became so good at it that it didn't matter what he said. It didn't matter how he said it. It didn't matter how he dug. I didn't react or lose my peace over any of it. And I would simply say to him, if you're not ready to have a conversation, that's okay. We can do it later. And he'd be like, but what do you mean? And I'm like, I don't want to talk when we're talking like this. I want to talk You listen, I speak, I listen, you speak. And if you can't listen when I speak, then let's do it another time when you're in a better state of mind. So that
Game changer.
was a huge changeover in our relationship. And so lately, what's happened now is we're both really good at it.
Oh my God.
Both, if he's speaking, I listen. I will listen to him for hours on end without uttering a word. He does the same for me.
That's amazing.
Exactly the same. And it opens so many doors.
Like
it has opened so many doors between us. Just intimacy, number one. So I have so much space, and I know that he's going to listen to me no matter how long it takes, that I'm not afraid to go where I need to go. I'm not afraid to say what's actually on my mind, or say what I'm actually afraid of, or speak whatever truth is there, good, bad, or ugly, And same for him. So our intimacy has improved. I mean, we're already pretty intimate, but let me tell you, this intimacy now, it's like I never worry. I never think twice about anything I have to say or bring across to him, because I know that until I do, he will not move a muscle or speak a word. I have the floor.
Wow.
And vice versa.
That's so powerful. And I think a lot of people are like, give me space, I need to say this, but they don't reciprocate. So it's not actually honored both ways. So to have two people in the same game, that's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, go on.
But you know what? Also, what's cool about it is that we had to go as far one way and then that far the other way. So him listening, he was very good at listening at the beginning,
he's
but
amazing.
not very good at talking. And then me being really good at listening, and him getting the listening as good as he gave it, but then him having to be in a position where he has to actually talk his truth, which was the hard thing for him. So he wants me to listen. So then when I'm there to listen, does he have the courage to speak?
The truth, yeah, wow.
So that was the big part of the transition, And then now we're on the other side of both of those. So neither anything. We're just being. We're just being ourselves now. We're not trying anymore, which is great.
Oh my. I've only got a couple of more minutes to ask a few of these questions, but I think we're going to get you back on here and go deeper. This has been amazing. So you just talked about that last section. I wanted to bring to the audience to introduce them to the concept, at least, of being and being yourself. And you mentioned to me countless times that there's only one main focus in your life. And that spills over into all these benefits. So could you maybe expand more about what this aspect of being yourself and how that came about for you, and why you think that's at the center of everything? Because you gave me a little bit of an explanation on that when we caught up.
Yes. So you're talking about how I think there's only one problem and one solution?
Yes. I picked it up.
Yeah.
I was on my bike going, God damn. It's that simple. It's not that easy, but it's that simple. And I started seeing the repercussions of that everywhere. So could you just expand for the audience? And then we're just going to have a whole segment on this next time, if that's okay. But it's just, you touch on it with Patrice and the benefit of staying in this being and self, and how that's
so you
for both of you.
So clients come to me with all kinds of issues saying, this, that, it's relationship, it's their work, it's this fear, it's that fear, it's the other, whatever. But really at the end of the day, it's only one thing. And it's that they aren't considering themselves, taking care of themselves, loving themselves, right? So because when you love yourself, then you move through the world making sure that you are taken care of every single time. So you become your why. You become your why. So until you become your why, all these problems, you're going to have all these problems because you're going to put somebody else before you, right? Or you're going to lie and betray yourself and say yes when you mean no.
So true.
Or so there's a million things. So until you learn how to take care of yourself fully and completely, and when I say take care of yourself, I'm not talking about a one-time or a two-time thing or a three-time thing. I'm talking about every second of every day, every thought, every emotion, every action, every way that you move through the world has to take you into consideration first, or else everything that you do and everyone that you say you do it for, it's completely null and void. Because if you can't take care of yourself, there's no way you're taking care of anybody else.
100%.
But when you can take care of yourself, you are taking care of everybody else simultaneously, just by virtue of taking care of yourself. So funny, because I was listening to a podcast today, Peter Crone, I don't know if you know him.
Yeah.
Really good. And he was saying the same thing. He was saying that we actually lessen the suffering in the world when we lessen the suffering in ourselves.
Oh, snap. That's
the basis of my work right there. Is that if you want to change the world, you change yourself. Because when you change yourself and you suffer less, the world suffers less.
And this you're proposing is the transformation journey, which does include some yucky stuff to get through to the other side.
Sure, because as soon as you take care of yourself, you're going to start pissing people off.
We do that all the time.
As soon as you say no to somebody who expects you to say yes, there's going to be backlash. As soon as you step into arena on your own 2 feet, instead of taking XYZ into consideration, you're going to get backlash. So that's part of the messiness, is knowing that every time you put yourself first, everybody's going to have something to say about it.
That's right.
That has to be okay.
Yeah.
In fact, it has to be more than okay. That has to be the evidence that you're doing the right thing.
Oh, snap. See, that's just an hour in itself just there.
I know.
Wow.
True.
Well, okay, I just wanted to give people the taste of what's coming, because that topic we're going to go straight in from the beginning and just go in there. 2020. So speaking of, that's the essence of your work, of taking care of yourself. What is it that's lighting you on fire, getting excited, you're energized by, that you're working on currently right now with your clients, that you might be able to share with people who might be interested in accessing you to go on this journey of transformation?
I mean, what I'm working on with my clients, again, it's so much of the same thing. One of the things that I'm known for, and that I'm becoming quite known for, is telling the truth. This is a big one. Wow. And oftentimes when clients are, and this is what I think excites me and fires me up, and it also excites them, maybe not at first.
Yeah.
But oftentimes I will call my clients out, and I do it in a really matter of fact, like, that's bullshit, I don't buy it, this isn't true, kind of way. And I'll tell you, sometimes they hang up on me. Sometimes they don't talk to me for months. Sometimes they, there's a lot of different reactions to that. But so far, 100% of them come back.
Wow.
So far. I've never lost a client.
I love that. That is the evidence.
Because
that
sometimes it takes time for people to integrate and look at, and I know because it was done to me, and look at that truth, because you feel like a fraud. And it's hard to live with yourself as a liar, a cheater, and a thief. But it's until you accept that you've been betraying yourself for a lot of years that you can change it. And it's a big change. You know why? Because that self-betrayal, we are taught to do it.
Yeah, so true.
Not something we chose. It's something that is ingrained in us. In fact, we live in a society where lying is less dangerous than telling the truth.
Oh, snap. That's another interview we're going to get into.
So
and we'll
it's
get into
a hard journey, man. You don't just have yourself and your past. You have the whole world system against you. Because your change and your enlightenment disrupts the system.
Sister, I'm loving this. So, couple of things on that. So what programs do you have, or how would one person reach out to you Do you have social media platforms? Do you have a website you can maybe share here?
I
We'll put
do.
in some links.
So
So
maybe
that
we
people can
can
set up.
add that there. We'll
Mhm.
add a link.
So what are you
I'm
most on?
very active on Instagram.
Mhm.
Lots of posting, lots of
Mhm.
writing.
I've
I
seen
also have a blog, which
your
I'll
blog.
give you the link to the blog,
Yeah.
which is going to be moving to a blog subscription site
Oh
very
yeah.
soon,
Nice.
called Substack.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a Facebook page called Wise Women Productions that's very active as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I can let you know when, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's September, we're launching a Patreon page that's
Okay.
going to have exclusive content. It's going to be a membership site called Praxis, which means practice in action. And it is all the tools, techniques, and strategies that'll be personally for you to change, grow, stop, learn anything you want. Like, you want to learn how to listen instead of talking? I've got a million practices for you to do that. You want to learn how to stop swearing when you're driving, your road rage? I've got a practice that'll help you stop that. So that's what it is. It's where the pedal hits the metal, you know? The rubber hits the road. Is
Amazing.
in the actual practices, everyday practices that create different disciplines than the ones that you're enacting right now. And it's not hard to do. It just requires a commitment.
Wow. Okay. Well, we're gonna have that topic for next time. Maybe if it's okay with you, let me know. Interview you just before you get that launch in September, and we can dive into a little bit more
Ah,
from there.
sure, I will.
But just on that point
Yeah.
about practices, so what is a daily ritual practice? I know we talked about some of the amazing work you've been doing in, say, yoga and things like that, but could you maybe share some of the rituals that you think are benefiting you and helping you, I guess, stay centered?
Sure.
Just quickly.
So I'm up at about 4:30 in the morning, and I start off with a yoga practice. And I'm currently doing an Iyengar 5-year yoga practice, and I'm about a year and a half in to that practice. And yeah, it's changed my life for sure. It's completely changed my life and changed my body. And I can feel it changing my body from the inside out. So it's very palpable, and it's very, I can feel it, like one day that I can't do a certain thing and the next day that I can do that thing. And the way that my flexibility and strength improves and my range of motion, but also how it really comes down to just waking up and getting on that mat. So nothing else really matters. As long as I get up and go on that mat, and I skip the drama and skip the conversations in my brain and skip the who, what, where, why, when, and just get up and get on the mat and do the yoga, that's all that matters. So showing up is 90% for sure. After that, I usually do a good 20-minute pranayama or breathing exercise. And after that, I do a 1-hour meditation without fail. And sometimes that 1-hour meditation feels like 5 minutes, and other times it feels like 5 days. Either way, I sit until that buzzer goes off. And those two combined practices, what they really do is they keep me focused, clear-headed, calm. Like, then I start my day. When I start my day, then I look at my emails. Then I look at my, who I have that morning, who are my calls, my clients for that morning. And then I get into writing or whatever it is that I'm going to do. But I'm always starting my day springboarding off of that. So I'm just coming into it really calm and intentional. And it just feels good. I just feel good.
Wow, that's amazing, because I find for myself, there's a really great quote I just read recently that said, you know, you don't actually pursue success because that's unattainable. What you do is you pursue the habits, and then the habits will pursue the success. And that looks after itself, sort of thing. And I've really been curious about people's morning rituals or just general rituals that they have. But what would you say, maybe just a final few questions, are you most proud of that you've accomplished in the last 12 months, be it personal or business?
I think what I'm most proud of is just the continuation. Is just the continuation of it all the time. That's it.
Uh,
It's just to keep going, to keep putting one foot in front of the other, to keep on believing in the highest and the best for myself, for the world, that everything's okay, that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, that the world is exactly where it's supposed to be, and to just keep on moving through anyway, do it anyway. I think that gives me a really great sense of like, I don't know, just like that I'm okay. It's as long it's going to be okay. As long as I keep moving forward and I keep walking and talking and it's intentional. I think that's what I'm most proud of, is being able to do that no matter what.
wow.
The world's falling apart. Oh well,
Yeah,
I've got a yoga practice in the morning.
that's it.
I tell my clients,
Mm,
corona or no corona, your work is the same.
mm,
Your work is the same.
mm.
No different. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed in here. It's all the same.
Yeah, yeah, no, I totally love that. And is there anything, because you sound like you've transformed through listening better, being present, um, helping people with not feeling bad about who they are and just self-forgiveness. But is there anything that you're still working on in the last that you haven't quite yet overcome that you're still working on? And if so, what is that and how are you trying to remedy that?
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, it's just ongoing.
Mm.
It's not the same old chestnuts that I've been working on forever
Love
still pop up. I still get triggered by in many different situations.
that.
So I think one of the biggest things that I do on a regular is just being really, really gentle with myself. That's important. And I'm always telling myself that I can never be gentle enough, ever. There's never, ever a good reason to berate myself or put myself down, which is something I used to do constantly. There's never a good reason to bring myself into that spiraling downward place of like, you should, you could have, you must, although, no. So that's something that I work on all the time, every day. Probably 30 or 40 times a day, I'm like, be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. I say it all the time, over and over again. There are plenty of times where I could see myself as being lazy, non-productive, not doing enough, if I wanted to, if I chose to. Or I can see what's good about it. I can see what's bad about it. I can see what's good about it. So for me, that's always the question. What's
That's a big one.
good about it? This
Wow.
is happening. That's happening. Everything's falling apart. What's good about it?
I think
The
you said
only
it
thing
last
that
time. That's
matters.
powerful. And that could go for the COVID or any of these traumatic situations and stories we've had in our past, right? Wow. Okay. Just a couple of finals. We're going to get you
Yeah.
back for sure. So first, before I ask the last final two questions, I just wanted to, Andrea, acknowledge you for the presence, the power, the amount of, I would say, intensity that you've engaged life and engaged the quest to transform and really get to speak your truth and what that looks like. And I've had so many countless conversations with you, even about, if you don't mind me sharing for next time, when women are going through their transition and the amount of power they get, because you've got an amazing,
Oh, yes.
doing amazing work, you got your relationship growing, but you've also come to this place where you're saying you've got the best years ahead of you. I hear you say that these days. And that's, even just for me as someone who's been on your journey, hearing you say that really inspires me. And I always wanted to showcase that success to other women who are like, oh, I've got kids, now it's over, or I've gone through menopause, now it's over, or now the best years of my life are in the past. Right. But you've come so present with an example and a role model for me, at least, and remind me so much of so many inspiring people. And I put you on the same regard of just great examples where I can point people to every time they to catch themselves, as you say, and say, what's good about this age I'm in now, or what's good about this. So just wanted to say thank you for being you, and thank you for pursuing transformation, because had you not, I feel this anyway, you're not the same woman I met last year. let alone the years before that. And we've just been on this perpetual journey and
No.
seeing you and Patrice grow. So
I hope I'm not the same woman.
but that's the goal. So really just wanted to say thank you for that, and just wanted to acknowledge you and say, you know, you're really inspired. So I really love that.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. So final two questions. Is there anything that you'd like to share about what you hoped people would ask you that they don't ask enough about you? Is there anything you'd like to share that asked you this question, or something you wish they asked about that you don't get asked often?
I don't know. My goodness, I don't know.
For
I
next
guess the
time.
only thing I could think about, maybe for next time, all I could think about is maybe stuff I don't really talk about much. Would be maybe just the work that I'm working on, the book that I'm writing, which I talk a little bit about it to certain people, but I don't really talk about it mostly to people because I'm in the middle of it.
Okay, so maybe final question is, what's your definition of entrepreneurial success?
Entrepreneurial success? Well, I was going to say earlier that when you were talking about your definition of success, or that you shouldn't chase success, you should chase the habits and they will chase the success. I was thinking at the same time that you were saying that, I was thinking that there's no need to chase success because you're already born a success, is one of the things that I know for sure, is that we're already born a success.
Yes.
So that's how come you don't need to chase success.
Yeah.
But in terms of entrepreneurial success, I think entrepreneurial success is exactly the same as personal success in one's life. I don't think there's a line between any kind of success. It's all the same. And it's all that perfect, beautiful alignment with self and the capacity to be able to take care of yourself and listen to yourself and you know, live in response to yourself. So that to me is a successful entrepreneur, is one who lives in response to themselves. You know, success for me has nothing to do with money whatsoever. And I'm probably making the most money I've ever made in my whole entire life is at this point in my life. And it has nothing to do with my feeling of success. Do I like receiving that money? Yes, because it helps me to buy better tools to do the same thing that I'm doing.
That's right.
But it doesn't in any way change the trajectory of my life at all. It just affords me better surroundings and better tools.
And more choices. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We're gonna.
But it doesn't change
yeah.
what I'm doing. I would never do anything different. I would never move anywhere different. And there's nothing I want that I don't have.
I love that. That's beautiful. Well, now that's triggered one last question, because I'm really curious about this with you, based on the fact that you said, you know, success isn't something to chase, and I really admire and I respect that. I think that's true, actually, if you look at it. So let's imagine you're at the end of your life, and you've written all the books, you've done all the talks, you've inspired and transformed as many women or empowered people as much as possible. And then you actually know it's your last final day, but you can't take anything with you, and everything that you've created in your lifetime has all disappeared. But you're left with a pen and a piece of paper, and you're asked to speak about or write about 3 truths that you would love to pass on to future generations. What would you say those 3 truths are?
I would say be yourself. Take yourself into the highest consideration, and don't listen to anybody except yourself. Ever.
Put that in the capitals. Ever. Awesome.
Ever.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for this. This has been an exciting interview, and I got so much out of it, as always. And
thank you.
I appreciate
I love it.
this. Yeah, we'll do this again. Thanks.
It was so good. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks.